They always seemed to be in control. Every word was calculated, and every action was planned to keep you caught in the cycle of manipulation. Despite your attempts to defend yourself, they consistently manipulated the situation to their advantage. It was as if nothing could stop them, as if they were invincible. But they are not. What many don't realize is that this type of person is not strong in themselves. They feed on something. There is a hidden source that sustains the narcissist's power, an energy that he draws from those around him. That's what keeps him standing, what gives him the confidence to manipulate, deceive, and dominate. Maybe you felt it firsthand. Each time you tried to walk away, he did something that pulled you back. When you attempted to reveal the truth, he skillfully twisted the facts to portray you as the guilty party. This is how they operate, sucking your emotional energy, your time, your peace, and even your faith. But there's something going on that the narcissist didn't foresee, something that cannot be manipulated or controlled. God is at work. God is tearing down the narcissists around you, and maybe you haven't realized it yet. Those who once believed in the manipulator's every word are now beginning to have doubts. The lies that seemed so convincing begin to lose their strength. The people who supported the narcissist are drifting away, and his influence is crumbling little by little. But the situation is not just a series of coincidences. When God chooses to intervene, he not only exposes the falsehoods, but also targets the fundamental source of the narcissist's power. God cuts off what they need most, the attention, influence, and control that has always fed them. When that source disappears, the narcissist crumbles. Because God's intervention destroys the illusion that sustains everything he has built, he becomes desperate, unstable, and empty. Today, you'll understand exactly how this happens, how divine justice exposes, disarms, and ultimately destroys the narcissist's power. When God decides to act, no manipulation can stop him. But first of all, you need to understand what really underpins the power of a narcissist. God is patient, but his patience is not infinite. While he allows time for all to repent, he does not indefinitely ignore the suffering caused by those who live in lying, manipulation, and arrogance. The narcissist, as much as he feels untouchable, is not beyond the reach of divine justice. God sees every mistake, every word twisted, and every life harmed by these actions. And when the moment determined by him comes, intervention takes place, and it is inevitable. The Bible gives clear examples of this principle. Pharaoh, ruler of Egypt, refused to listen to God's warnings. Even after several warnings, he persisted in stubbornness and arrogance, believing that his power would be sufficient to resist. For a while, it seemed like nothing could stop him, but then God intervened. Plague after plague, the empire that seemed solid began to crumble. When Pharaoh finally freed the Israelites, he still tried to regain control, but at that moment, God ended his cycle of power definitively. The sea closed, destroying Pharaoh's supposed strength. Another example is Jezebel, a woman who stood out for manipulation and control. For years, she persecuted God's prophets and used their influence to dominate and spread evil. His fall was not immediate, but when God decided to act, his end was humiliating and definitive. Jezebel lost everything: power, allies, and any control she thought she had. These stories show that God's patience is not negligence. He does not ignore the pain of those who have suffered. When the time for repentance runs out and the narcissist insists on his arrogance, God begins a process that completely dismantles his power. This process, although often silent, is clear to those who know how to observe. The lies begin to lose strength. People who once defended the narcissist start to notice the manipulations. His once strong support system starts to wane. Even strategies that once worked fail to produce results. This is divine intervention in action. When God decides to expose the truth, He reveals every hidden detail, every disguised manipulation, and every deception that the narcissist has spread. It is a process that cannot be reversed. Once God decides that it is time for the fall, there is no manipulation that can prevent the collapse. Perhaps you are starting to notice these signs around you. While these may appear as natural changes or coincidences, they are actually God's gradual dismantling of the narcissist's dominance. This is merely the initial indication that divine justice is in operation. When God begins this process, He not only exposes the narcissist, He completely disarms their power and reveals that the force that seemed so firm was nothing more than an illusion sustained by lies. Could you please explain how this divine process occurs in our lives today? Before we continue, write in the comments, "God is at work, the lie won't last forever." Share this message to reach more people and subscribe to the channel to receive more inspiring reflections. God doesn't just decide to act. He follows a process that dismantles every pillar that supports the narcissist's power. This drop does not happen suddenly or randomly. When God begins this process, He reaches specific areas that allow that person to manipulate and control others. And this dismantling occurs clearly and progressively, revealing the true weakness that has always been hidden. The first step of this divine intervention is the exposition of the truth. For a long time, the narcissist sustains himself through carefully constructed lies. He manipulates facts, distorts words, and inverts situations so that he always seems to be the wronged one. With this ability, he convinces others that he is the victim while blaming those who try to unmask him. But God does not allow lying to last forever. When He decides to intervene, the truths that once seemed hidden begin to surface. What the narcissist has carefully hidden begins to reveal itself unexpectedly. People who once believed in his words begin to notice inconsistencies. Once perceived as mere disagreements, conflicts now expose the underlying manipulation. The narcissist's mask begins to crack, and the image of perfection he tried to maintain no longer convinces. This exposure generates an immediate reaction. Allies and supporters begin to move away. The narcissist depends on these people to maintain their dominance. They are friends, colleagues, or even family members who, often without realizing it, sustain manipulative behavior. They justify their attitudes, defend their lies, and invalidate the pain of the victims. But when God begins to remove that support, the narcissist loses his base of support. Those who once protected him start to question his attitudes. Some quietly walk away, while others openly confront their lies. This disruption is devastating for the narcissist, as they can't maintain their power alone. He needs others to defend him, admire him, and justify his actions. Without this, his control begins to crumble. This loss of allies leads directly to the third stage, the loss of control. For the narcissist, controlling others is essential. He dominates environments, manipulates conversations, and dictates the behavior of those around him. Breaking this influence plunges him into despair. At this stage, the narcissist tries to intensify his manipulations. He increases the lies, raises the tone of his voice, and becomes more emotionally aggressive. But now, these tactics no longer produce the effect they once did. People are no longer as susceptible to deception, and the power of their words has diminished. This desperation leads to the fourth stage, the desperate and futile attempts at manipulation. When he realizes that his power is slipping through his hands, the narcissist enters a spiral of chaos. He tries to manipulate even more aggressively, throws new lies, and makes desperate excuses to try to regain control. But these attempts, instead of restoring their power, only hasten their destruction. People begin to notice their emotional instability, their lies contradict each other, and their behavior becomes more and more evident. He appears to be creating his own problems. Finally, the most intense and definitive stage arrives, the total, irreversible, and complete fall. When God decides it's time to end this cycle, He doesn't just reduce the narcissist to failure. He eliminates any influence that person might try to regain. His words no longer inspire confidence. His allies do not return. Its manipulation is no longer convincing. What remains is only ruin. The power that seemed so solid crumbles into nothing but ashes. That person who seemed to control everything now finds himself isolated, discredited, and powerless. And this event is not a consequence of chance. It is God's justice in action. Maybe you're starting to notice these signs around you without even realizing it. That person who once seemed to always be ahead now begins to stumble. The lies that seemed so convincing now ring hollow. People who once defended him begin to move away, and the manipulation no longer has the same effect. This is no coincidence. It is a clear sign that God is dismantling the dominance of this manipulator. He is cutting off the fountain that sustained his power and leading everything to an inevitable fall. If you are witnessing these signs, fear not. God is at work. And when He begins this work, He not only weakens the narcissist, He completely destroys the control that this person exercised. When God begins to remove a narcissist from your life, He doesn't just expose the person, He allows you to see clear signs that this work is underway. These signs, initially subtle, indicate that the manipulation is waning and the cycle of control is nearing its conclusion. The first most evident sign is the exposure of lies and manipulations. For a long time, the narcissist built a network of deception that kept him protected. He manipulated stories, distorted conversations, and made you and others question reality itself. This ability to distort the truth is one of the narcissist's greatest weapons, but God does not allow this illusion to last forever. When God decides to act, the lies begin to unravel. People are starting to notice small contradictions that previously went unnoticed. People who once blindly believed the narcissist are now beginning to realize that something is wrong. Stories that once seemed coherent are becoming confusing and full of gaps. The image of perfection that the narcissist tried to maintain begins to crumble. And no matter how well he has manipulated in the past, when God decides to expose the truth, no lie remains hidden. This exposure is a clear mark that divine justice is at work. Another strong sign that God is removing a narcissist is the removal of people who once supported or protected him. Narcissists don't operate alone. They often surround themselves with people who validate their lies and cover up their actions. Often, narcissists manipulate these allies into thinking they are assisting a victim, but in reality, they are perpetuating the abusive behavior. But when God intervenes, He begins to open the eyes of these people. Friends, colleagues, and even family members who once defended the narcissist are beginning to realize the truth. Some quietly walk away while others begin to confront him directly. This loss of allies is devastating for the narcissist, as he depends on these people to maintain his influence. It is important to understand that this distancing occurs naturally. God does not need to force anyone to see the truth. He simply allows people to perceive what they previously could not see. Those who once justified the narcissist's attitudes are now beginning to realize the pattern of lies and manipulation that has always been present. As this unfolds, another indication emerges, a significant shift in the narcissist's behavior. His instability worsens as he becomes aware that his control is eroding. The narcissist may become more aggressive, trying to regain the power that is slipping away. He may instigate chaos, disseminate fresh falsehoods, or even pretend to be the victim to stir up trouble. This desperate behavior reveals the vulnerability he has always tried to hide. The narcissist who once seemed cold and calculating is now unstable and insecure. This shift isn't just a change in temperament, it's clear evidence that his power is crumbling. These signs can appear gradually or happen intensely and suddenly. But in either case, there's something essential you need to understand clearly. Don't try to stop this process. Many people, when they see the narcissist losing power, feel sorry or believe that they should help him change. This compassion is natural, but it can be dangerous. When God is removing a manipulator from your life, trying to rescue him can only delay the process and put him back under the cycle of manipulation. The narcissist's withdrawal isn't just a punishment for them, it's a protection for you. God is delivering you from a toxic presence that has weakened your peace, your emotional health, and even your faith. By trying to maintain ties with this person, you risk becoming entangled again in the web of lies and manipulation that God is undoing. Instead of trying to help the narcissist, focus on recognizing what God is doing for you. Notice the signs He is revealing, and trust that this process is necessary for you to live in freedom and peace. If lies are being exposed, people are leaving, and the narcissist is acting desperate, don't worry. God is working to remove them from your life. Once this process commences, the fall is inevitable. But when God begins this work of righteousness, there is something essential that you need to understand clearly. When God decides to intervene against a narcissist, He doesn't just act to punish or destroy that person. God loves those who have suffered from manipulators and controllers, so divine justice is more than condemnation. God doesn't just expose the narcissist. He works to restore and set you free. Often, those who live under the influence of a narcissist carry deep scars, lies that distorted their view of reality, words that undermined their self-esteem, and manipulations that stole their inner peace. The presence of the narcissist generated a continuous cycle of pain and emotional exhaustion. This dynamic stifles joy, steals trust, and weakens even faith. God, in His righteousness, doesn't just remove that person from your life. He also prepares a way for you to be healed and restored. Divine intervention is not just a response to the narcissist's behavior. It is a demonstration of how much God cares for you. He sees the pain you faced, the nights you cried in silence, and the moments you felt powerless in the face of manipulation and lies. And when He decides to act, it is so that you can finally live in freedom and peace. This process of liberation involves more than just pushing away the narcissist. God also restores what has been stolen. God can restore weakened relationships. The manipulator's words have distorted his identity, but they can renew it. His hope, which seemed lost, is rekindled. That is why divine justice is, above all, a work of love. When God removes the narcissist from your life, He is ending the cycle of destruction and paving the way for a new phase, a life of clarity, security, and spiritual growth. But even in the face of this liberation, there is a real danger that many people face: the fatal mistake of looking back. After being freed from manipulation, many victims are tempted to remember only the good times with the narcissist. This distorted view makes them forget the emotional wounds and suffering they actually experienced. This trap is dangerous because the narcissist, in his manipulation, creates a psychological dynamic that confuses the victim. He alternates between moments of attention and kindness with periods of manipulation and abuse. This oscillation generates an emotional cycle that over time can make you believe that those brief moments of calm were actually genuine love. This is precisely what leads some people to doubt whether they really did the right thing by walking away. Thoughts like, maybe I exaggerated. She wasn't that bad. If I had acted differently, maybe things would have changed. These doubts arise because the narcissist, even absent, still tries to maintain power over his mind. It is a form of manipulation that persists even after physical distancing. Therefore, when God removes a narcissist from your life, you must do not look back. The people of Israel had a similar experience. Following their liberation from Egypt, numerous individuals started to yearn for the comforts they enjoyed during their enslavement. They forgot about the years of oppression and only remembered the times when they seemed to have some comfort. This distorted nostalgia almost led them back to slavery. God is calling you to move forward, to walk in freedom, and live away from the manipulation that hurt you so much. Looking back only weakens your healing and restoration process. If you feel doubts or regrets about the narcissist's distancing, remember, God does not make mistakes. If He removed that person from your life, He saw something you perhaps hadn't. He knew what was being built in the shadows and recognized the dangers you couldn't see. God's justice doesn't just bring an end to the abusive cycle. It makes room for you to flourish in ways that once seemed impossible. God doesn't just want to take you away from what has hurt you. He desires to lead you to a renewed life where your faith is strengthened, your identity is restored, and you find safety in His presence. Therefore, do not allow yourself to go back to what He has already taken from your life. Don't get caught up in the illusion that things could have been different. What has passed is behind us, and what God has for you is infinitely better. The time of manipulation and suffering has come to an end. Now is the time to live the freedom God has prepared for you. When God removes a narcissist from your life, He is not only protecting you from present danger, but He is also freeing you from a cycle that may try to pull you back. The problem is that even after liberation, many people face a silent and insidious risk, the danger of looking back. This danger lies in the way our mind tends to distort the past. It is common that after moving away from someone manipulative, painful memories begin to lose strength, while the rare good moments gain prominence. This selective nostalgia creates a dangerous illusion, a false idea that maybe things weren't so bad after all. You start to remember the kind words the narcissist would say when he wanted to earn your trust. He can remember the moments of apparent affection, the small gestures that, at the time, seemed sincere. And without realizing it, these positive fragments begin to obscure the reality of the suffering you have faced. Many victims fall into this emotional trap. The narcissist, with his manipulative behavior, created an emotional cycle marked by moments of calm, interspersed with periods of abuse and control. This dynamic generates mental confusion that, over time, makes you doubt what really happened. This process has a name: distortion of emotional memory. It happens because your mind tries to cling to what feels safest, especially after a long period of manipulation. The problem is that this distortion can easily cause you to forget why God removed this person from your life. That's why looking back is so dangerous. Every time you allow yourself to idealize the narcissist or minimize what you have suffered, you are reopening a door that God closed out of love for you. This distorted nostalgia can generate thoughts such as, maybe I exaggerated. She also had good moments. If I had acted differently, maybe things would have changed. These thoughts are misleading. They ignore the ongoing pattern of manipulation and abuse that has hurt you emotionally and spiritually. When God removes someone like that from your life, He doesn't do it for no reason. He saw what you couldn't see, lies that were hidden, manipulations that were being built, and pain that could have intensified. He acted because He knew that you could not live fully as long as you remained under this destructive cycle. One of the clearest examples of this danger is in the story of Lot's wife. Upon being delivered from the city of Sodom, she was given a direct command: don't look back. This instruction was not only physical, but also spiritual and emotional. Sodom represented an environment of destruction and sin, a place doomed to ruin. God didn't want her to just leave that place. He wanted his heart to be free of what was left behind. However, Lot's wife continued to look back even after her rescue. In that moment, she transformed into a salt pillar, symbolizing the peril of clinging to what God had already condemned. This story is a powerful warning. Don't look back. When God frees you from a manipulative and toxic presence, He is calling you to something greater. He wants you to move on, free from the cycle of pain and manipulation that imprisoned you. Looking back will not change what happened. On the contrary, it can trap you again in the emotional mess that God was already undoing. It's like opening a finally healing wound. Instead of harboring nostalgic thoughts or questioning whether you made the right decision, remind yourself of the reason you asked God to set you free. Recognize that every step you took away from this environment was an act of divine protection. Now that you understand this danger, it is essential to know how to move forward safely, without falling back into the cycle of manipulation that God has already interrupted. When God removes a narcissist from your life, He doesn't just break a cycle of manipulation. He prepares something new for you. This deliverance is not only a way out of suffering, but also an invitation to a life filled with peace, purpose, and true healing. However, this process does not happen automatically. Many people, even after being freed, face difficulties in feeling truly free. This is because, as painful as it was, the cycle of manipulation created an emotional space that now feels empty. This void can be confusing. Although the narcissist brought pain, it also occupied her thoughts, her emotions, and even her routine. You've spent so much time trying to protect yourself, deal with conflict, or find a solution that, when it comes to an end, it feels like something is missing. This feeling of emptiness doesn't mean you've missed out on something important. It's actually an opportunity for something much bigger. What God desires to fill in this space is far deeper and more transformative than any illusion the narcissist has tried to create. Now is the time to turn to God and allow Him to restore that which has been broken. This new phase begins with a decision to trust that the freedom God is offering is safe and sufficient. Spending time in prayer, seeking His presence, and holding on to the promises He has left is essential for this process to be complete. When you draw closer to God, He doesn't just strengthen your heart. He brings clarity, reassurance, and the conviction that this deliverance was the best thing that could have happened. It is also important to recognize that after so much time of manipulation, your emotions may be fragile. Emotional trauma can leave you confused, insecure, and even struggling to trust again. Seeking spiritual and emotional support is essential at this time. Seeking people who understand your pain and can offer practical help can make all the difference. Trusted friends, spiritual leaders, or a Christian therapist can help you process the wounds that remain and find healthy ways to rebuild your life. Part of this process involves taking back what was left behind. Relationships that have been weakened during this time can be restored. Hobbies and activities that brought you joy can be reintroduced into your routine. These small actions not only help you reconnect with what is good for you, but they are also fundamental to strengthening your emotional health. Each step toward a more balanced life is a practical way of affirming that the narcissist no longer has power over you. Another essential step is to remember who you really are. For a long time, the narcissist has tried to distort your identity, making you feel inferior, incapable, or even guilty about things that weren't your responsibility. But these lies don't define you. God created you with purpose and value, and your identity is not shaped by the manipulator's words, but by the truth God affirms about you. With each step you take toward healing, that identity is strengthened, and with it, your confidence is restored. As much as this freedom is a powerful achievement, it is essential to be careful with thoughts that try to pull you back into the cycle of the past. It is common that after a while, your mind tries to idealize the positive times you lived with the narcissist or generate guilt for having moved away. These deceptive thoughts can lead you closer to what God has already chosen to distance yourself from. Whenever these doubts arise, remember how this cycle hurt you and how God acted to deliver you from this environment. This new phase that God is building is not just an attempt to resume life as it was before. He wants to take you to something greater. The result is the opportunity to discover new purposes, invest in projects that strengthen your faith, and engage in activities that bring genuine joy and true peace. That's the difference between simply getting out of an abusive cycle and actually embracing the freedom God has prepared for you. But there's one crucial step you need to take before you can truly enjoy that freedom. Trust in God's decision and don't look back. What He took from you was not your future. It prevented you from living fully. God has not only set you free, He is restoring that which has been destroyed. Let the divine fire turn your pain into strength, your past into ashes, and your life into testimony. What once seemed unbearable will one day be living proof that God does not abandon those who cry out to Him. Every wound will heal, every tear will become courage, and every loss will provide a greater opportunity. You weren't born to be trapped in the cycle of manipulation and control that's held you captive. You have been called to freedom, to live peacefully, joyfully, and securely in God's presence. If this video spoke to your heart, comment below, "I'm free." May God guide every step of your new beginning. Thank you. See you in the next video.